Hi everyone. Relative rotation graphs is a fantastic concept designed by Julius de Kempenaer, which allows you to look at the relative strength of your portfolio or a list of stocks against a benchmark. Now, if you haven't come across this concept before, I highly recommend you visit our videos page and look for the Using Relative Rotation Graphs video, where Matthew Verdow goes into a bit of the theory behind the relative rotation graph concept, and also shows you how you can use them in your work. But for this video, I'm just going to show you how you can open them in Optuma and some of the properties and actions that we can do on the charts. So let's go to the video, go to the software. So here is an example of an RRG, and the rotation comes in as we go back in time. You can see the rotation there around the benchmark. So as I said, go back and watch Matthew's video first, maybe, to get a clearer understanding of exactly what we're seeing here. But how do we open these charts and create them on our system? So what I'm going to do is click on the New menu button, and then this is a multi-code chart, because we can add as many symbols as you like into the RRG. And you'll see under relative rotation graph, we select that, and this brings up the standard security selection window. And from here, we can type the ticker symbols that we want to put on the RRG. So I'm just going to start typing, and like other multiple code charts, such as the relative comparison chart, as you build them up, they get listed on the right hand side, and I only want to do those two, and then I'm just going to click the open button, and now that's added IBM and Microsoft to this chart. Now the key thing about RRGs is the benchmark which you're comparing them to. By default, it will use the country main index of the symbols that you're selecting. So these are US symbols, so the default index is the SPX, the S&P 500. If these were Australian symbols, it would use the ASX 200 or the FTSE 100 for UK, London Stock Exchange symbols. So when we right-click on the chart, again, we have the right-click menu for the tools, for the actions and properties. So we click on the pencil to get the properties. These is the same as the panel on the left-hand side of the chart, which again I had rolled away. But we can look at the properties by right-clicking and going to the pencil. So the most important one here is the comparison index. So as I said, this will automatically be set to the country index. But if I wanted to change that, so instead of SPX, let's say, now it doesn't have to be an index. You can set it to another stock, for example. But let's instead do the Dow Jones. So I'm just going to type DJI instead. So now that is that won't have changed very much, but that is now using the Dow Jones Industrial Average for the benchmark. Some of the other important properties here are, as we scroll down, sensitivity. So we've set that to 4. This basically adjusts how sensitive the relative moves are against the benchmark. But we found that 4 as the default position is a good value to set it at. But feel free to experiment and change with that. Plot filter, this is when we have lots of symbols on the chart. So actually what I'm going to do is open up another RRG via a different method. Like anything in the software, if you haven't realized already, there's multiple ways of opening charts, including symbol lists. So I'm going to double click, bring up the security selection window, and click on the symbol lists tab. So this is where I have brought in a list of symbols in a CSV file. So you could have your portfolio, you could have index constituents. So in this example, I've got the NASDAQ 100, and I'm going to open list as, and I don't want to chart all, I don't want to do a watch list, I don't want to do a page layout, I'm just going to select RRG. So now that's adding all 100 symbols into the RRG, and again the benchmark is the SPX, but what I'm going to do is change that to the NASDAQ 100. So I think that's NDY is our symbol under world indices, and that's now the default or the benchmark being calculated for those 100 constituents. Now you can see that's a bit of a mess. We can't really see too much what's going on, and that's where the property, the filter property, comes into play. So don't have any filter applied there, but what we can do is draw a manual box. So that sort of hides everything around the benchmark to get rid of all the ones that are close to the benchmark that you might not be that interested in looking at. So you can click and drag that box to filter out exactly what you want to see. Alternatively, instead of drawing a manual box, we've created a automatic standard deviation. So that's set to 1 standard deviation. So anything, so that's only including on the chart everything that's outside 1 standard deviation, but from the benchmark. So let's set that to 2, and you can see that that's now filtered out based on those measurements for that particular day. Some of the other properties, so hidden item transparency, so they're the ones that are actually, because we filtered out a lot of those hidden symbols, we can reduce that to 0 just so that we know that there is actually something in there, but we can set that to 0 to have it completely blank. These are all the labels. When we mouse over any one of those arrows, these are the calculation labels that pop up. So it tells us the momentum and the ratio of the RRG, and also the angle and the position on the screen and the direction that it's heading. So we have lots of calculations there, and you can turn them off, the labels, just by selecting those boxes. Now by default, only RRG values for the last year will be calculated. That's because it's quite a intense calculation, and if you've got lots and lots of symbols on the RRG, then it can take quite a while to process all that information. But if we set that to 5 years, that will then recalculate, and we can now, by using the history slider at the top, we can now scroll back all the way 5 years ago. For a daily chart, that's probably not so good. So to change it, change time frame, we can go 1 week or 1 month. I'm going to set this to 1 week, and then rolling my mouse wheel back will reset the scales to get everything in view. So now we can roll back based on a weekly rotation around that benchmark. And as you can see, we've got that standard deviation filter on the chart. So as we do scroll backwards and forwards and the position of the stocks change relative to the benchmark, that standard deviation filter also changes as well, because that's calculated on every day, or in this case every week. Now the length of the tails can be adjusted as well, either through the right-click menu and the properties, or we can click and drag the left-hand side of the history slider. So as we go further back, drag that to the left. That says 16 bars. You might not be able to see that on the video, but so this being a weekly RRG, each tail is 16 weeks, and as we mouse over, it gives us the date and the value for that particular point in time. So each dot on the arrow is a time period, so in this case a week. And likewise, we can roll all the way back and make it 4. So that's what's happened over the last month, and we can we can then rotate and go back and see that generally a clockwise rotation around the benchmark. Other properties that we can change. This is where we can show a grid on the background. The background colors, we can hide them. Change the transparency, things like that. Labels can be the ticker symbol, they can be the name, or they can be the name and the code. Obviously, depending how many you have on the chart, can get a bit messy. And you can change the, let's put that back, you can change the size, again, because of, depending how many you have on the chart, you can adjust that as well. You can adjust the color style as well, and also the font size, and some other properties here that we'll go into in more detail now. Let's click on VRTX for a sec, and we'll get a little thumbnail. And then if we double click on that, that's going to open the actual price chart. What I'm going to do now is just click and drag that and put it on the left-hand side of the window. Now what you'll notice is that first off, at the bottom of the chart is a visual representation of the RRG lines. So these are the values of the ratio and the momentum values. So basically, when they're both above 100, they're in the top right leading quadrant. And you'll notice that there's a slight grey vertical line on the bar chart. If we click and drag that, you'll notice that the RRG on the left also changes. So that's what's called the date control link, and you'll notice that VRTX is now in orange, so we can easily keep our eye on it. As we drag that date control link back on the bar chart, we can see what happened to Vertex as we advance and go backwards and forwards. Now what we can also do, just like any regular bar chart, we can roll our mouse wheel to zoom in. But one of the other key things with RRGs is we can change the bar colors to represent the quadrants. So I'm going to right click on any bar, go to the pencil, go down to color schemes, and you'll see RRG quadrant bars. Now one key thing to remember is that this comparison index is now by default SPX, whereas the actual RRG on the left-hand side is the NASDAQ 100. So I want to make that consistent so the calculations are the same. So I'm going to change the benchmark here also to NDY. And as you can see, green bars represent when Vertex was in the leading quadrant. If I just grab that date control link and go backwards in time, you'll see that the Vertex in orange there is now in the blue leading quadrant. And likewise, when we go back even further into red for lagging and blue for improving. So it's a great way to visualize the position of the stock on the RRG chart. One other example I'd like to show you is opening RRGs from a watch list. So I'm just going to add a new page, double click, and I'm going to open up a watch list from a symbol list. So this is a manual list that I created of all the SPDR ETF sectors, and I'm going to open list as a watch list. And then from there, I can click the Open List As icon and open up as any type of chart, including an RRG, and that will open up that list on the right-hand side. But what's really useful about having a watch list as well is we can add columns using the scripting language for any of the RRG values, such as the momentum, the ratio, the quadrant, even the direction and the angle of the arrow where it's heading. We go into this in detail in the advanced scripting series, where I go into I give examples of scanning on RRG measures and also some of these watch list columns. But we can just quickly add a scripting column. All the RRG functions are under JDKRS, and we can put in quadrant. And when we apply that, that now puts in the column there where the current quadrant of each of those sectors is can be found. So obviously lagging, we can sort by that as well. So all the lagging ones are in the bottom left corner of the RRG. So that's how some of the various ways you can open relative rotation graphs. Again, I'm going to reiterate the importance of watching the Matthews relative rotation graph videos for a bit of the history and the concept behind it and how you can actually use them in your analysis and portfolio management. But hopefully that was a good overview of how you can open the charts and some of the properties that we can manipulate and use. Any questions, as always, please let us know. Thanks very much.